Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm Naveen Wall, Associate Director of Client Strategy, and I lead our media and technology practice here at Movable Inc. So here at Movable Inc, I partner with some of our largest media and entertainment clients to drive business transformation and C-level objectives using Movable Inc technology. So today I'm going to be addressing some of the large shifts in behaviour that this pandemic has brought on for streaming audiences. We're going to dive into those topics in a bit more detail, and we're also going to focus on some of the leading strategies that strengthen our current opportunity for engagement and retention right now. So, of course, as we all know, the coronavirus pandemic has had a seismic impact across industries globally. These maps up here highlight the progression of lockdown orders that happened across the US in just a matter of days. As we know, not only did states lock down, but entire countries locked down, restricting global movement for long periods of time. With that, of course, industries were rocked. Many came to a complete standstill, and they have lengthy, complicated recovery processes ahead of them. Now, the streaming industry, fortunately, wasn't one of those industries. Amidst all of that chaos, the streaming industry saw astronomical growth. Consumers really leaned on digital adoption to fulfill entirely new needs as they stayed home, resulting in huge subscription numbers across all markets, including those that were already considered as saturated in early Q1. Organisations that were really able to demonstrate and fulfill value for these new needs benefited from much of this accelerated growth, and they're going to continue to see that for the longer term. On the other hand, those that failed to adapt and missed the mark struggled in what's an exceptionally competitive landscape. These headlines from a macro standpoint emphasise how agility is key and how now is our moment to seize. So, to succeed, organisations have had to shift to a new strategic optimum, and today that includes a blend of traits, and we're going to see organisations continue to prioritise many of these beyond the pandemic. I'm sure you can all relate to this first trait. Organisational leaders have had to make decisions in afternoons that would typically take months to make, and this rapid shift in decision making has allowed for quick and much needed transformation. Remote working and crisis response has led to the virtual delayering of organisations to facilitate communication flow, allowing processes to jump across several layers of hierarchy, better connecting the corporate centre with those on the front line. And several teams have also become smaller and more agile to quickly resolve issues and also jump on opportunities in front of them right now. I know from some of the streaming clients that I've been working with that this has also paved the way to secure technical resources, to build out real-time data access to drive production efficiencies, but also capture this opportunity. And this crisis has also pressure tested and strengthened relationships with vendors who have now become extended resources and enablers of agility. So, to understand these pillars and how they should be prioritised for the longer term, we need to understand how to best apply them to serve our customers. And whilst we're all very aware of what led to this, it makes sense just to take a step back and refresh on the journey of changes that our customers themselves have undergone. So this comes as no surprise, but most customers are not spending a normal amount of time with normal out-of-home activities. With lockdown and social distancing measures, out-of-home activities have been replaced with at-home alternatives. Online streaming, as we can see from this chart, being one of those leading alternatives. In fact, 37% of people are using online streaming services more, and 4% have newly adopted online streaming. Whilst consumers are now actively spending more time engaging with online streaming activity, this increased engagement is not unique to the health crisis. These trends have been upward for some time, and this pandemic does not deflect those growth trends in any way. This new growth experienced, however, does lend well to new at-home routines and behaviours. And we're going to see that increased adoption lead to longer term habits. These new routines and behaviours have been seen in many forms, and working from home is a really great example of that. 54% of workers have switched to a work from home schedule, and that change has prompted large shifts in behaviours and habits. Customers are now spending more time at home, and they're also waking up later in the morning, and almost half of them are going to bed later at night. Less time spent worrying about things like wardrobe or getting ready in the morning or travelling as part of their commute. Rather, often that time's being redirected into streaming and consuming additional media, whether that be streaming the latest TV series or listening to music. When surveying Movable Ink's top streaming clients, we found that 90% of Movable Ink's top streaming clients noted increased overall engagement for their streaming audiences. And we're also going to find that some of these behaviours are going to continue long after the pandemic subsides. In fact, 66% of consumers note that they intend on continuing their increased usage of streaming services once the pandemic subsides. And even as restrictions begin to lift, we're still seeing continued usage, the consumption of more content more often across more devices. So this data up here from our friends at Braze highlights some of the trends that they're seeing across 42 of their streaming clients. On average, they saw sessions increase by 27% every week since the start of the pandemic. Now, during the peak of the virus, they found that new users were skewing more towards web, but now that restrictions are starting to lift, mobile has become a huge focus. 57% of new streaming users acquired in the last 60 days have been acquired through the mobile channel. Daily active users on mobile apps has doubled since March 1st in comparison to daily active web users, which has remained relatively stable. And what's more, these new mobile users that are being acquired are higher quality users and are also more likely to be retained. Their 7-day retention rate is 4.5 times higher than web users. So it's really clear to see that users are interacting across more devices, and mobile really is an exceptionally important channel right now. So if we're to take a more detailed look into the audio universe, we can see that audio streaming on smartphones and tablets has really catapulted in growth. Smartphones now reach 64%, up from 50% year over year, and tablets up to 24%, up from 20% year over year. Nielsen also found that 75% of people listen to music whilst working at least once a week, and 40% of those do so daily, which means that the activity of listening is very much habitual for a large portion of listeners. And we can also see the impact and growth to both voice assistant reach and smart speaker penetration as listeners are spending more time at home and on their mobile devices. All right, so just focusing in on the video universe here, the amount of time that people are spending in front of their TV screens streaming content also continues to increase. Streaming now accounts for 25% of all television minutes viewed, and that's really big. Not only are total streaming minutes steadily growing, the number of people that are actually willing to budget and subscribe to new streaming services is also continuing to grow. 25% of consumers have added a new streaming service in the past 3 months. In response to all of these changes, streaming services have adapted their offering to cater to these new needs and behaviours. And this has ultimately led to considerable acquisition in Q1 and also naturally aided a lot of the headlines that we saw at the start of this presentation. Several services offered free trials, new offers, they removed their paywalls as a gesture of goodwill and as an act of public service, but really it was to keep consumers engaged, connected and informed. Organisations have also responded with revised content strategies, and those include a large array of items, including curations of relevant content that's being prioritised, such as work from home playlists. New channels have also launched, directed to cater to these new needs, such as health or well-being. And we've also seen content release schedules adjust. Firstly, pulling forward content to attract and acquire new audiences and also keep existing audiences engaged. But we're also seeing delays in content as well to maintain a steady release of programming, given that a lot of production has either halted or been dramatically challenged right now. Within the audio streaming space, we saw a rise in new content, including video, as people spend more time with their screens. We've seen a rise in podcasts and also the increased adoption of at-home devices. So this new environment has also fostered the opportunity for innovation. Live event challenges have been transformed with virtual events, including ticketed virtual events as well. Production has pivoted, including socially distanced scenes. We're seeing a rise in animation, and innovation continues as we hear of plans to include AR technology in streaming to create immersive streaming experiences. More recently, we're also seeing pricing changes and new strategies, including bundles and price guarantees to really attract and retain subscribers. Now, of course, we all know that we're all very concerned about retention at the moment, so it's going to be a key topic that we cover off today. And I'm sure you're all keeping a very close eye on your churn numbers and also our economic state. But just to level set, I'm going to provide a brief overview so that we're all on the same page. So this chart up here illustrates the share of executives that expect the economic conditions to improve in the next 6 months. As you can see, the outlook has become less hopeful, and as unemployment figures increase, we're going to see purse strings tighten and consumers reduce their discretionary spending. This, of course, means we should be expecting increased competition from ad-supported services, which is going to impact churn rates. And we've already started to see that in early Q1, where OTT video churn rates jumped from 35% to 41% year over year. And just knowing that the acquisition of a new customer is 6 to 7 times more costly than retaining an existing customer, retention really becomes of heightened importance. All right, so with such a strong focus on retention, I wanted to show you how you could drive value for the customer using the power of Movable Ink in your customer lifecycle. Of course, there's many ways that you can do that, and you're all somewhat familiar with our technology, but I'm going to highlight a handful that make most sense with some of the trends and challenges that stand out most today. So, this first use case here is not one that we would traditionally consider as a streaming service. That said though, with launches like Apple Fitness Plus that combine integrations with Apple Music, our definition of new streaming services really needs to expand beyond traditional forms. Ultimately, engagement is finite, and these new types of services are competing for that same share of engagement. So this use case here really demonstrates the value of a service for existing users. As purse strings tighten, consumers are going to be looking to keep services that are valuable to them, and a year in review campaign is a really engaging, exciting way to demonstrate that value. So here, Peloton have created an end-of-year campaign that summarizes meaningful information and statistics in a visually compelling way. Movable Ink are tapping into 12 different data points to display in real time valuable information like the number of total workouts or a user's favorite songs, highlighting the value of their subscription whilst also celebrating their achievements. Now, since this was a custom API build, the statistics and information displayed in this email update in real time each time the email is opened, making sure that we're always reflecting the latest and most accurate information. You can also easily reimagine this campaign for a more traditional streaming service to highlight items like viewing statistics or listening data, really data points that are valuable for your subscriber. This next use case here focuses on one of the regular communications that streaming services dedicate weekly resources to: newsletters. So these are often highly engaging and visible communications across organisations that require high levels of sophistication to remain up to date with the latest content, whilst also being highly personalised to drive engagement. Here, ESPN have automated the production of their semi-weekly sports newsletter. A prominent first name call-out in the hero drives recognition of the level of personalisation and this highly personalised experience. Movable Ink are then tapping into 2 APIs to display the top latest news articles, personalised to a one-to-one level by each fan's favourite sports and team. And we're also tapping into top upcoming shows that are prioritised by the ESPN team. This next use case addresses content discovery, one of the biggest frustrations for streaming audiences. We know that content libraries are vast and they're ever-changing, which can often make it overwhelming to find what you want to watch or listen to. Knowing that consumers are engaging later in the day and later at night, here we're targeting and personalising content so that it's relevant at moment of engagement. If a user opens this email in either the morning, afternoon, or evening, content is updated in real time to reflect programming that's relevant for the time of day that they engage. Continuing with driving engagement through personalised content discovery, this next example shows how we compare one-to-one recommendations based on viewing behaviour with aggregate recommendations to further enable that content discovery. So here CBS All Access have automated real-time recommendations in their retention series to drive engagement for users that are at risk of cancelling or payment expiry. Movable Ink are tapping into their one-to-one recommended for you and aggregate APIs to always display the most up-to-date and relevant content for their customers. With frequent changing streaming behaviours, in order to be really effective with recommendations, it's important that the recommendations displayed are as in real time as possible. And by tapping into an API, you're eliminating the opportunity of stale data displaying. Okay, so we all know how important the mobile channel is, and this pandemic has only increased our time spent with mobile, making it even more important. A huge benefit of Movable Ink is the ability to extend strategies and technology leveraged in email across to other channels, including the mobile channel. So here, CBS All Access are leveraging that same API that we just saw in that recommendations email to power a rich push notification to alert users of new recommendations. This efficient production process allows them to coordinate messaging cross-channel, whilst also continuing to drive content discovery and streaming engagement in the channels that are most important to their customers. This next example continues with that ability to extend strategies from email to mobile. So in this example, DAZN, who are the fastest growing sports streaming app in the world, are leveraging an API that they're already using in email to power a rich push notification that dynamically generates a schedule of upcoming events. The app calls an API to build a schedule of upcoming events that can be targeted by a user's region, sports preference, and team preference. Now, whilst this drove notable streaming engagement for the DAZN team, it was also automated, driving huge production efficiencies and also eliminating the need for continual design and production resources. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the use cases and insights that I wanted to share with you today. I really hope that you enjoyed today's session and you found these insights valuable, so thank you so much for joining us. And of course, if you do have any questions or if you'd like to chat further about any of the topics that we've touched on today, my LinkedIn is connected to my speaker profile on our Rethink website, so please don't hesitate to connect. Thanks again for joining us.